Chapter 3 of Scotland End to End maps the Scottish National Trail northwards from Milngavie to Kingussie. Starting on the West Highland Way, this next stage of the trail was a continuation of my hike that began earlier in the day in Kilsyth. Drimmen is the destination on this first leg of the West Highland Way. Given its international popularity, it was not surprising this long-established route is well signposted. Climbing out of Milngavie, Mugdoch Country Park offers a pleasant start to the journey, this genteel walk in the park suggesting the accompaniment of legendary Scottish folk musician Tony Cuffey. After a long pull-up beside Creigallen Loch, passing some suitably patriotic cabins, the path opens to superb views of Dumgoyne. Beyond Dumgoyach Knoll, the mountain ranges of the Scottish Highlands become clearly visible in the distance. Dumgoyne is a prominent volcanic plug on the edge of the Campsie Fells, and as distinctive a landmark in this part of the country as the Eildon Hills were hiking through the borders. Passing the Glengoyne distillery, I met an American hiker from Arizona. He introduced himself as Mark McCain, son of John McCain. I hesitated for a moment, thinking I might be walking in the company of the famous senator's son, but Mark spells McCain with a K. Looking over to Loch Lomond and his next day's route, Mark revealed he had planned to walk the Scottish National Trail this summer before friends in Arizona pulled out of the trip. At the end of a long day, having walked 25 miles from Kilsyth, it was a relief to reach the Winnock Hotel in Drimmen. The quaint view of the village square from my window complemented the unique charm of the setting as day turned to evening. Wednesday, May 20th, and the stage from Drimmen to Aberfoyle marked the halfway point of my hike. As a gateway to the Trossachs National Park, Drimmen also marks the divergence of the Scottish National Trail from the West Highland Way, following instead the Rob Roy Way northeast towards Perthshire. After the now obligatory full Scottish breakfast, I followed the old Gartmore Road out of Drimmen, with views looking back to Dumgoyne and the broader range of the Campsie Fells. Well, it's more than halfway today, climbing up from Drimmen, and we're on our way to Aberfoyle. As you can see, a glorious day. Stayed last night at the Winnock Hotel, which is very nice, and if the weather keeps like this, it's going to be brilliant. Looking north, the Menteith Hills in the foreground and Benledi in the background stand out against the skyline. Descending towards the plantations of the Queen Elizabeth Forest Park, the first signs for the Rob Roy Way become evident after leaving the Gartmore Road. Ben Lomond rises into view heading west, but it's the Victorian water scheme, built to transport water from Loch Katrine to Glasgow, that is the most impressive feature during this section of the Forest Trail. The Corrie Aqueduct, in particular, is a monument to the marvel of Victorian engineering. While it is called a park, there is no mistaking the Queen Elizabeth Forest is a working entity. Passing the picturesque Clashmore Cottage, the track wends its way through the forest towards Aberfoyle. We're walking through the Lochard Forest, and again, still a beautiful day. As you can see, descending into Aberfoyle, it's 11:15 in the morning. It's been a very nice walk on the Rob Roy Way. So just a very pleasant day, going down to meet Alex Duncan, friend from university, and have lunch with her in Aberfoyle. The road into Aberfoyle runs alongside the extensive town cemetery. My friend Alex Duncan kindly bought me lunch at the appropriately named Liz McGregor's coffee shop. Like my meeting the previous week with Hugh and Charlotte Chalmers, I had not seen Alex since our undergraduate days at Edinburgh, where we were members of the University Mountaineering Club. The stage from Aberfoyle to Callander heads directly through the Menteith Hills. Walking up past Aberfoyle Golf Course afforded superb views around the Trossachs, including a distant view back to Dumgoyne. Mud skiing could best describe my experience traversing the forest track through the Menteith Hills, but the reward on the far side is expansive views over Loch Venacher to Benledi. That's Loch Venacher, all the way down to the end. Again, lovely evening to walk. Just did some mud skiing through the forest, which was fun. And should be down in time for dinner. Benvenue can be seen in the distance looking westwards over Loch Venacher. Shortly after crossing the River Teith, you enter the popular Scottish tourist town of Callander. I booked a night at Poppy's Hotel on the outskirts of town, a comfortable, if rather pricey accommodation with an excellent restaurant. Thursday's stage from Callander to Comrie followed an old right-of-way through Glenartney. At this point, the Scottish National Trail leaves the Rob Roy Way and the Trossachs National Park. The day began with a walk back through town, taking in the sights, including an almost Texas Longhorn eating an ice cream, before heading up to the Callander Crags. A helpful map of the Queen Elizabeth Forest Park showed the route I had travelled the previous day over the Menteith Hills. A steep climb up rocky steps through the crags led to a large summit cairn built to commemorate Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. This excellent vantage point provided panoramic views looking back over Loch Venacher and down into Callander. Okay, well here we are. It's Thursday, May 21st, and we are atop of the Callander Crags by the Jubilee Cairn, as you can see here, for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee. Quite a substantial edifice here, and we just walked. This is the top of the Callander Crags. Just walked up from Callander, you can see down there, and a nice view from where we were yesterday, coming over the Menteith Hills right ahead of you there, and that's the Loch Venacher. And unlike yesterday, you can see the weather is closed in the mist up there. And there's our route for the day. We're heading over to Comrie through Glenartney, which is right ahead. Benvorlich, which is my first Munro, is up there in the mist, so I think we'll give that a pass today. The low cloud hanging over Glenartney did not bode well for my day ahead as I left the crags, descending down to the road by the Kelty Water. The road passes the farm at Braelenny, with Benvorlich dominating the head of the glen. It's hard to believe I climbed Benvorlich, my first Munro, 40 years ago. The installation of water pipe meant having to dodge heavy construction equipment before branching off over the Kelty Water up to the house called Arivuri Ardich. Pausing for a while, I took in the beautiful views back down the glen from Arivuri Ardich. With the weather holding and now moving away from the construction, I was glad to be heading into a more remote landscape. Glenartney forms a classic glacial U-shape and also heralds the transition from Stirlingshire into Perthshire, otherwise known as the Big County, with its diversity of beautiful landscapes. Regardless of your stance on the politics of Scottish land reform, there is no doubt about the main industry sustaining the economy in the glen. Halfway along the glen, it was possible to assess the remainder of the day's walk into Comrie. The Bailach in Glenartney, so we just come over there, and you can see the windmills over there on the top, and then all the way down to Comrie there. I'm not sure if that's a sleeping giant on the left. It's been interesting. Saw some hikers earlier. They were hiking through to Aberfoyle actually, so and it's been fine. No rain and a little breezy, as you can probably tell, but it's been a pleasant walk from Callander this morning. The descent from the Bailach passed by the secluded Glenartney Lodge on the left before reaching Auchinnar and its kennels of barking hunting dogs. The trail then transformed into a beautiful wooded path following the water of Ruchel all the way down into Comrie. This beautiful spot at the outskirts of town is a popular swimming hole. Comrie is located on the Highland boundary fault and nicknamed the Shaky Toon because of the frequent earth tremors felt here. In 1840, the first ever earthquake observatory was built on this hill to record these seismic events. The path heads over the River Erne before reaching the main street and my accommodation for 2 nights at the Morven Bed and Breakfast on Dundas Street. This modest residence, owned by Agnes and Douglas Stewart, is very comfortable, has great internet service, and is far more reasonably priced than the large hotels in town. Agnes and Douglas have a wonderfully eclectic Perthshire garden in the back of their house, and they cook a superb full Scottish breakfast. Friday, May 22nd, was a planned rest day in Comrie. Throughout my childhood, my family used to visit Comrie on summer vacation, so I was familiar with the sights of the town. The Davenports are longtime family friends living just outside Comrie, who I hope to visit during my stay. When I contacted Isabel for their telephone number, she informed me that my Aunt Vi, standing on the right, the sister of Pat Davenport, had died on Monday. My mother and Aunt Vi were good friends for many years. This photograph of them taken when they hiked the Larry Grew through the Cairngorms. My father, mother and Vi were all active in scouting, and even although we were not blood relatives, Vi Goodall was still an aunt in my eyes, and always referred to as such by me growing up. This is my mother on the same hike through the Larry Grew with Leslie Davenport, the eldest of the Davenport children. The short walk from Comrie to their farm at Tullybanachar took me past the Ross Bridge and cottages still displaying their political allegiances after the recent general election. The Tullybanachar Cafe, built by Peter Davenport, then sold to a private operator, is a place I ate at many times and is now a popular stopping place for bus tours. The cafe is part of a larger retail complex, including a garden centre. I stopped in at the Food Barn, as it used to be known, for a cup of coffee, enjoying its eclectic decor, before dropping in unannounced at the Davenports' residence. I was delighted to meet Madeline and Pat Davenport, who welcomed me in for a cup of tea. Madeline is the youngest of the 3 siblings, her brother Christopher, seen here on the right in an early photograph, with Pat in the middle and her husband Peter Davenport on the left. Not only was the family coping with the recent loss of Pat's sister, my Aunt Vi, but I was also saddened to learn that Peter Davenport died only last year after a sudden illness. Here is a photograph from the late 1970s showing Madeline with her brother's motorcycle, also used as a prop by my mother and Aunt Vi. Madeline lives at the farm with her husband Andrew Finlayson, an architect, whose superb office space is part of a converted barn. Andrew published a book on the standing stones of Strathearn, this local part of Perthshire, and was kind enough to give me a copy, which I carried back to Austin. A short walk from their farmhouse is a wood that I used to play in growing up. Walking through this stretch of enchanting forest on the banks of the River Erne was also walking back in time to the cottage where we used to stay on our family vacations. These photographs were taken on the same small hill in the wood overlooking the cottage. Revisiting this place rekindled many happy childhood memories. At the end of the cottage lane, a left-hand turn on the A85 takes you towards St Fillan's, past the locally famous rock depicting Puff the Magic Dragon, continuing further west along Lough Erne to Balquidder and the burial place of Rob Roy MacGregor. But I turned right, passing fields that we once used to camp in as Boy Scouts. Bordering this camping field is Grommare's cottage, the former residence of the Davenport family matriarch. Here is Aunt Vi outside Grommare's cottage, and my mother holding Snoopy, my aunt's dachshund. I was glad to have the opportunity for this walk down memory lane, and to offer my condolences in person to the Davenport family for both Vi Goodall and Peter Davenport during my visit. None of the day's events had been pre-planned, but given I had reached Comrie the same week my Aunt Vi died, and given our family history with the Davenports, I walked back into town experiencing yet another sense of synchronicity on the Scottish National Trail. My rest day in Comrie ended with a superb meal at the highly recommended Deal's Cauldron restaurant, where they served a delicious taste of home, a strawberry creme brulee. One final evening walk through town extended the memories of this special day. The stage from Comrie to Loch Fruchi heralded the first night of camping out on my hike, a prospect which I was looking forward to. Having dined at the Deal's Cauldron, it was time to visit the real McCoy. The picturesque woodland walk up beside the River Leadnock led first of all to Wee Cauldron and a chance to stop on the viewing deck.
Okay, good morning. This is Saturday, May 23rd, and just walked out of Comrie up this beautiful wooded pathway, as you can see. It's a gorgeous sunny day, and just had a great rest day in Morven B&B in Comrie. Got to see the Davenports, and that was really nice. Got to do a lot of resting. We're here at Wee Cauldron. This is not the Devil's Cauldron, but here's the shot here. And just a beautiful area. A beautiful time to start the next leg, or the last leg of the trip. Tonight we'll be camping for the first time by Loch Fruchi, so that should be fun.
Continuing on through the woods and along the superb wooden walkway, the Devil's Cauldron is soon reached with its own robustly constructed viewing platform.
Here we are on the viewing platform of the Devil's Cauldron, and as you can see, it's already quite warm this morning. This is looking back. Again, beautifully constructed footpath. And there, if you can see it, is the fast-flowing waters of the Devil's Cauldron.
Leaving the cauldron, the path heads up out of Lagan Wood into the open expanse of Glen Leadnock.
Walking up Glen Leadnock, and just wanted to show how wonderful the day is today. So I'll stop for a minute. It's just absolutely gorgeous. Blue skies, not a breath of wind. Hello, Mr. Sheep. How are you? Even the sheep are loving it. Just a gorgeous day. As you see, makes you glad to be out and ready for another day's adventure on the Scottish National Trail.
The surrounding countryside was bathed in Perthshire amber. Such a fine day meant the car park at Coishevachen was overflowing with hill walkers out to bag Ben Hoinsey, a Munro I climbed with my father in 1978. Passing the cottages at Invergeldy, the path climbed up the broad, heather-clad southern approach to Ben Hoinsey, and just over the rise, there was a surprise in store. David Malkin, who had just climbed Ben Hoinsey, came bounding down the path to meet me. It was great to see David again, so soon after our walk to Milngavie 4 days ago, and kind of him to check in on me along this stage of the trail.
So there's David running down there, making the most of a glorious day here. I don't know if you can see in the distance some of the snow-capped peaks. There's probably Ben Lors, maybe Ben Leddy, and then the peaks in the distance. I'll have to check those out. But again, fantastic weather. Here's where I'm going.
My path followed the Invergeldy burn up to the top of the pass, looking down into Glen Amand, with views over to the snow-capped slopes of the Ben Lors mountain group beyond the Shee of Atholl.
Some of the snow-peaked mountains in the distance. I think over there somewhere is Schiehallion. But that looks nice for the end of May, still to see some snow. This is where we're going, down to Glen Amand. We'll be following Glen Amand over that way, and can't see Loch Fruchi at the moment. Anyway, it's been a little bit of a hike up to here. I'm ready for some lunch.
After a long boggy descent into Glen Amand, I stopped off for lunch at this weir. My only quibble with the Walk Highlands guide at this point is to indicate there is a perfectly serviceable Land Rover track down to this weir, not mentioned in the guide. The route along the starkly beautiful Glen Amand rejoins the Rob Roy Way, forming part of the Amory alternative. The First World War memorial cairn on the site of the Stuck Chapel was also the chosen campsite for Duke of Edinburgh Award participants from Perth, who I met on my walk down the glen. The Scottish National Trail leaves Glen Amand at Ochnafree Farm, passing through its impressive tree-lined avenue entrance. There is no doubt the farm buildings at Ochnafree enjoy a magnificent highland setting. Heading up the narrow path through Glen Lochan, I could well imagine walking in the footsteps of Scotland's famous red-haired outlaw and Jacobite revolutionary. But not to worry, there was plenty of real-life drama ahead on the path towards Lochan and Mullen.
Well, I don't know if you can see, there's just a little chick in front of me and a mama grouse right over there. Worried that the little chick right down on the path right there, I'm going to go for it. So she's trying to lead me away from the little chick that is right down there. I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that little, it's a baby grouse right there, just stuck in the road. As I say, mama is trying to lead me away in the heather. I can see her behind me, trying to protect her little baby chick. But there's a little baby grouse chick right there. That's amazing. I'm just going to leave her alone so she doesn't panic. But there you go. Wildlife in the Scottish Highlands. Again. There's that little baby chick. There he goes, off he goes. Off to the mama. Oh, there's more, look at them all. And here comes mama. Okay. I'm leaving. There she is, tracking me, making sure I'm going away.
A few yards further on, I came across this sign with the following warning.
That sign right in front says, ground nesting birds, please keep to towpath or footpath.
On my way past, I was surprised to see Lochan and Mullen playing host to what looked like Canadian geese. By the time I avoided a few more obstacles on the path down to Loch Fruchi, I was ready to make camp for the evening. Unfortunately, the expected idyllic lochside camping spot across from the wooded Crannog did not materialise, so I continued along the road heading up Glen Quaich for a few more miles before reaching Sheehan Schoolhouse and a suitable camping spot in a field nearby.
Again, this is our first camping experience in a long time. REI Quarterdome, excellent. So we're a little bit further on our way to Aberfeldy. There's Loch Fruchi in the distance, you can see there. Couldn't see a decent camping spot, but this will do for tonight. Wind's picking up a little bit, but we're all nice and snug in here.
Sunday, May 24th was set to combine 2 stages, walking to Aberfeldy, then heading on to Pitlochry. After striking camp, a short walk through farm fields led to the stone bridge at Garrow, at the beginning of a long sustained ascent out of Glen Quaich. The reward for the steep climb was great views looking back down the glen to Loch Fruchi. On reaching the summit pass, a superb panorama opened up across the moorland over to the Ben Lors Group and Schiehallion. Encroaching rain showers only added to the beauty of this wild and remote landscape.
So turning, you can see the Lors Group and Schiehallion, as you can see. There's some rain in the distance, but there's the Lors Group, Schiehallion to the right. Just a fantastic day up here. Thoroughly enjoying the hike. We're heading off. You'll probably see there's the stile and a windmill farm. That's going to be fun.
Turning at the reservoir, an array of windmills confronts the path. Many people regard windmill farms as a blight on the landscape, but when they are considerately placed, to me their jarring appearance can enhance the interest of an otherwise featureless area. The path descended northeast towards Aberfeldy, following the Urlar burn. These bonny banks of the burn were a tantalising prelude to more impressive things to come further on down the glen. Signs for the Rob Roy Way reappear on entering the woods above Aberfeldy, and after a short walk through the birks, I reached the Falls of Moness footbridge.
Well, here I am, standing above the dramatic Falls of Moness, and I'll just turn you around so you can see. Quite a spectacular viewpoint. Now we're just heading down the Birks of Aberfeldy.
The dramatic Falls of Moness provide a spectacular entrance to the famous Birks of Aberfeldy and draw quite a crowd. Robert Burns' association with the Birks, established on a visit here during his Highland tour, has been used to poetically enhance the tourist experience of walking through this beautiful landscape. Unable to find a suitable rendition of Burns' song, my experience of the Birks is best defined by Eddie Reader's exquisite performance of another Burns favourite.
John Anderson, my Joe, John Anderson, my Joe. When we were first acquaint, your locks were like the raven, your bonny brow was brent. But now your brow is belled, John, and your locks are like the snow. But blessings on your frosty pow, John Anderson, my Joe. John Anderson, my Joe, we'd climb the hill together, and money's a canty deed, John, we had we and another. Now we mun totter down, John, and in hand we'll go to sleep together at the fat. John Anderson, my Joe, John Anderson, my Joe.
After lunch at the Habitat Cafe in Aberfeldy town centre, I was fueled and ready for the second leg of the day's walk, now heading to Pitlochry. I was delighted to be joined on this part of the walk by Neil Short, a friend and former teacher at George Heriot's in Edinburgh, my former high school. Neil recently retired from Heriot's after teaching physics there for over 40 years. He was also the master in charge of cross-country running when I ran for the club. Here we are pictured at Sevenoaks in Kent before the Knoll Run in 1980, and in the Heriot's quadrangle a year later in the club photograph when I captained the team. Neil is an accomplished trombone player and regularly played with the Heriot School First Orchestra. I was fortunate to play trombone alongside Neil for several years during my own time in the orchestra. I thoroughly enjoyed reminiscing with Neil about our shared time at Heriot's, the school we have all come to know as the inspiration for another famous Scottish institution of higher learning. In fact, as we walked along the River Tay towards Grantley, Neil mentioned that he taught physics to one of J.K. Rowling's daughters, the author having enrolled both her daughters at Heriot's. Grantley is a major water sports centre in Scotland, home to the Scottish Canoe Association, with excellent whitewater rafting on the rapids of the River Tay. Neil and I were certainly entertained watching the exploits of the rafting groups as they passed by.
So quite young kids on that one. Hello.
The looks on many of their faces were priceless as they careened through the ravine, shooting the rapids. Shortly after leaving the recovering rafters, Neil and I said our farewells. It was great to see him again and catch up after so many years. I was very thankful that, even feeling under the weather from a stomach ailment, Neil was able to join me on the hike. The path to Pitlochry is well signposted, as you can see, and constitutes the final stretch of the Rob Roy Way. Ascending alongside bluebell-carpeted meadows, the path provides superb views down Strath Tay and back up the glen towards Aberfeldy. Traversing Fonab Moor, the remains of Clachanadiri Stone Circle can be found just off the path through Fonab Forest. These ancient stones gave me the opportunity to reference one of my wife Heather's favourite television shows, leaning heavily on Rob Roy legend and Jacobite romanticism. The pleasant afternoon walk descending through Fonab Forest soon opened up to views over Pitlochry. The trail enters Pitlochry along the suspension bridge over the River Tummel, formerly the site of Portnacraig Ferry. The scenery on the southeast side of the bridge contrasts starkly with the Pitlochry Dam and Salmon Fish Ladder to the northwest. This small memorial garden just off of Pitlochry Main Street marks the official end of the Rob Roy Way, the route I'd been following for the past 4 days since leaving Drimmen. Like Callander, Pitlochry is another Scottish tourist hotspot, thanks to the enthusiasm of Queen Victoria for vacationing in Scotland. Walking through town along Atholl Road, I was eagerly anticipating my own regally appointed rest stop for the evening, admittedly a huge step up from my previous night's accommodation. I had been invited to stay at the Green Park Hotel on the banks of Loch Vascally, compliments of my good friends Annie and Neil Conn. This tremendously generous gift was all the more special for the opportunity to see Neil's parents, Anne and Michael Conn, who used to be my next-door neighbours growing up in Collinton. Thankfully, Neil lent me suitable attire so I could blend in with the other well-dressed patrons inhabiting these posh surroundings. On Monday, May 25th, Neil joined me on the 8-mile stage from Pitlochry to Blair Atholl. Neil previously walked with me along the Union Canal on the Edinburgh to Atholl section of the Scottish National Trail. The Green Park Hotel full Scottish breakfast was certainly up to par, and the sun shone brightly as we posed for photographs on the garden terrace overlooking Loch Fascally. Stopping to check the map of our path along the loch shore provided one last opportunity to enjoy the elegant profile of this Pitlochry landmark before heading towards Blair Atholl. This excellent viewpoint over the River Garry allowed time for a wee rest before climbing up to the Killiecrankie Visitor Centre.
Okay, Neil, so we have just walked from Pitlochry.
And now we find ourselves round about 4 miles or so upstream by the Soldier's Leap, which is next to Killiecrankie, a good Scots name, Killiecrankie, and it's a bonny day for a walk here in Perthshire.
It is beautiful. We just Neil and Annie treated me to a wonderful evening at the Green Park Hotel in Pitlochry, and it was absolutely superb.
The invoice is in the post.
That's right, and now as you can see, this is what we're walking through, the kind of landscape. Absolutely gorgeous here in Pitlochry.
A short tour of the National Trust Visitor Centre acquainted us with yet another watershed event in Scotland's Jacobite history, still reverently honoured in song.
And ye had been what I gave him, you would have been sae canty, oh, and ye had seen what I hae seen on the ways of Killiecrankie, oh.
And if ye had been what I hae been, ye would have been sae canty, oh, and ye had seen what I hae seen on the breeze of Killiecrankie, oh.
If you had been where I hae been, you would have been sae canty, oh, and you had seen what I hae seen on the breeze of Killiecrankie, oh.
The footbridge across the River Garry led to Blair Atholl railway station, where Neil had parked his car. His thoughtful planning gave us the opportunity to drive the 3.5 miles along the road to the internationally famous House of Brewer, where we spent the afternoon in yet more refined surroundings, drinking cappuccinos and shopping for gifts in this Highland bazaar. On his return to Pitlochry, Neil dropped me off at the Ptarmigan House in Blair Atholl, my base for the evening, before hiking into the Cairngorms National Park on the final section of the trail to Kingusie. The Walk Highlands guide ominously states, the next section of the walk through to Kingusie takes 3 days with no facilities. As it turned out, my planned 3-day hike through Cairngorm National Park to Kingusie became a 2-day epic. But that, as they say, is a story for next time.
Next time.